Today, guys, I'm going to show you why you should never save your dates in SQL using a local timestamp. All right, let's go ahead and get into the video.
All right, guys, so today we're going to go over timestamps in Redshift. So I'm going to go ahead and create this table here. It's just some fake data from Gemini. We have like event IDs, event names, and then event type, and then we're going to load in this data, and then I'm going to kind of walk you through the thought process, right? All right, so now we're going to go ahead and run the bring in the data for the actual time frames, all right? All right, now that we have our data loaded, let's go ahead and look at the dates, the information, right? So we have events here with names and then event types, right? So as you can see in these event types, there's no offsets, there's no listing of what time zones. So the question you should be asking yourself, what time, what time zone is this in, right? Is this in UTC? Is this in EST? Is this in IST? It's a very big question, right? It's a very important question to ask yourself when you're working with dates, because then depending on the type of industry, like if you're in logistics, hours and minutes matter, and your location of where you're at matters, right? So the question you should be asking yourself is, well, how do we make it obvious to the person using this what time zone this was in? Now, when we're in Redshift, this automatically assumes you're in UTC, but like in other databases, like in Snowflake, you can put it in, or I've worked in databases before that were in EST, right? So let me go ahead and show you how we can actually be more explicit so it's more obvious to the people using our database. All right, now that we've seen the data set, I'm gonna add some columns, right? So the first column I'm gonna add here is this event type timestamp Chicago. And what I'm effectively doing here, guys, is I'm gonna convert this UTC time, this event timestamp, into the Chicago timestamp, right? So I'm gonna show you that. So let me run that update statement. Okay, so now if I run that, right, now I'm gonna hit this select statement so you can see what happens. Okay, so now you can see that these times have been adjusted for CST, right? So this was on 6/1 at 2:30 a.m. Now we've backed it up to, I believe, 9:30 p.m. on 5/31, right? Now, again, this is still not explicit. Like if I didn't name it Chicago, which we're going to get into that in a second, about why that's not a good naming convention, it would not be, you still wouldn't have any reference of like what time zone it is. All we've done is just added a timestamp or like wall clock time, and it's not obvious to us when this happened, right? So just keep that in mind, okay? So now you might be asking, how do we make this explicit where the user, the database user or someone even downstream can make this obvious? So what we're going to do is we're going to actually add a column to actually pass in the time zone, right? So I'm going to go ahead and add this event timestamp time zone, right? Cool. Okay, so I'm going to actually set this up. So I'm going to run this update statement. Okay, cool. So now I'm going to run these local events. Now what this does is now we know that this time here represented here was in America, Chicago. And we could also be explicit, which I'd recommend too, is also for this timestamp saying it's in UTC. Again, Redshift, it's going to put in UTC, but in other databases, you have the flexibility to override that functionality. So what I'm saying is be explicit when you can. That way other users know what time zone this snapshot or this event happened, right? All right, so now I'm going to show you why I don't believe in using offsets, right? So as you can see here, we have our event time, original event time. We have it in CST as well as explicitly laying this out, right? So I'm going to go ahead and run this query here. And what this is going to do is take all the local events, but it's also going to do a date different hours between the timestamp in UTC and then the event time in Chicago, all right? And watch this. So you see that most of these are -5 hours, right? Because Chicago is generally speaking 5 hours behind that. But because of daylight savings time, in the winter, it's -6. So what I've seen before is people they'll just let's say they want to convert a time from UTC back to CST or go from CST to UTC. They'll just explicitly use 5 hours and forget the fact that there's daylight savings time being involved, right? And this can get even more complicated if your database isn't in UTC, isn't in another time zone, and one time zone doesn't use daylight savings time, or the daylight saving time periods are different. Like I've seen this in, like, I believe in Japan. Like I've worked with people in Japan. Well, I worked in the East Coast, and I think the daylight saving time are like they don't even line up. So you could have crazy overlap that's causing issue with these timestamps. So that's why using the actual, like, the explicit America Chicago is gonna yield better results, because you don't have to worry about the difference in time. You'll just calculate that on the fly, so you don't have to worry about when daylight savings time is. And another thing to think about too is I'm showing you guys dates in the past. Let's say you record an event, right? But you're recording a future event. So let's say you have a client come in and they're booking out 3 months out for like a wedding or something, right? Now, let's say hypothetically you're in a place where there's political changes, right? And they say, hey, we don't want to use daylight savings time. Now that date time that you've used, the difference in UTC might no longer be 6 hours. It may be 5 hours, because you remove the daylight savings time out, and it's still in winter, right? So these are the things you need to think about. So this is why I'm just not a big proponent of using offsets, because to be more explicit, use the time zone, right? And just state the time zone, put it in the database so you know when it, like which date line you're using, but then just get the differences from the actual time, the UTC time, and then the time that you, by using using this function here, allowing the database to handle when it was daylight savings time. The database is aware of all these different changes and things. You don't want to worry about that, right? Keep all that type of functionality, all type of thinking in the database.
All right, so to recap the video, right? Databases typically store data in UTC, and if you want to report something in a different time zone, you either want to convert it in the database and be explicit about what the time zone is, so that way your downstream users in a BI tool or whatnot can know about it. Or I would say just put your stuff in UTC, explicitly say it's UTC, and then downstream convert it. But under no circumstances do you ever want to you want to be explicit and pass offsets into your database, because you don't, because it's more difficult to think about when daylight savings time was. It's more difficult to think about the future implications of that. If a country or wherever you work or wherever you're dealing with decides to no longer use daylight savings time, right? So at the end of the day, let the database do what it does. Let it figure out those calculations, and you just apply additional attributes to your users to help them figure out when and where something happened. All right, guys. Let me know. Let me know if you like this video. Also, let me know how you've handled date conversions and migrations and things like that. And if you have any comments or anything like that for our next video, please let me know down in the description.